Hi, welcome. My name is Rebecca Ebel. I'm the director and curator of the Pizzuti Collection. I don't think I need to say that because I look out and see friends and family and artists, and thank you all for being here. I want to I have a list of thank yous, one being the Columbus College of Art and Design for hosting us here today. They've been a great partner in many things, and today is just another great example of them opening their doors and letting us feel quite at home. I also want to thank Ron and Ann Pizzuti and the Pizzuti companies for their endless generosity. Not only did they renovate a building in the short north, give it to the Pizzuti Collection, and they continue to support our programs, including NOW-ISM. I want to thank the GCAC, the Greater Columbus Arts Council, and the City of Columbus for their trust in us as a new institution and supporting our exhibition and this artist talk and developing our website and the various outreach that we're starting to develop here. And thank you all for being here. So NOW-ISM we opened last night, is a particularly special exhibition for me. Having worked as a gallery owner, I worked with many of the artists in the collection there today, so it's especially rewarding to have Dion and Almond here, along with a number of other artists. They're definitely friends. They're new people I haven't met today. Heather Gwynn Martin is here, and Pamela Jordan, who I hadn't met before the show. But this is definitely the kind of painting and sculpture and video that I've been looking at and been interested in for the past 20 years. So it was a great joy and delight to put this show together. It's all 21st century. It's all works from, and Ron was very firm, we had nothing from 2000 or 1999, so it's all very 21st century. And it's a great joy to start this off in our second season at the Pizzuti Collection. We have a terrific year ahead with NOW-ISM. We also have Ori Gerst, Portraits. It's a film series, and in February we'll open with the Campana Brothers and a solo show of Tomari Dodge, and then in the summer of next year we'll have a Cuba Revisited. So thank you all for your support, and we look forward to welcoming you throughout the season at the collection. One of the things the show does really well that is fun, and one of the reasons Ron and I were a good match from the beginning, is not only this type of interest in painting and abstract painting and sculpture, but Ron is really a champion for a number of these artists who are up and coming. He has the ability to, take a chance on a young painter. Brian Pori is here, and he told me himself last night that he'd never seen the painting actually hanging on a wall. He painted them piece by piece in the studio. And so it's really great for a collector like Ron to really believe in these young voices. So I think that's one of the things that really distinguishes the Pizzuti Collection and the programs that we do, is there are things that you will see here that you won't see elsewhere. Many of the names are well-known names in the art community, but right alongside of them are up-and-coming new faces. And Sarah Cain is in many ways a poster child for the show. Not only we used her image on our catalog, on the banners, on our postcards, but she represents, in a lot of ways, this spirit. The painting Kiss is the center of our third gallery. We even had a young wedding couple come and pose in front. It was very sweet. Digress. But she is someone who has been gaining attention over the last 10 years and has shows around the country. You may remember her work from Michael Goodson's show, My Crippled Friend, that was here last year. She did 2 years ago, a beautiful wall installation. So you'll see in her presentation paintings and installations and drawings. She was born in Albany, 1979, received her BFA from the San Francisco Art Institute in 2001, and her MFA from UC Berkeley in 2006. Currently, she lives and works in LA after many years in San Francisco. Although on the side, I saw her in New York this summer, and was lucky to go through the school at Kinderhook, and I learned she actually went to school there, which was really interesting. So she shows with galleries around the United States. In fact, there are some of her dealers here today. Adam Glick flew in today from Gallery Lalong in New York. And Megan McConnell is here from Anthony Meyer in San Francisco, so we're delighted to have your support and attendance here tonight, too. David Pagel was my first choice, the first person I thought of when we were working on this show. I met him when he was a visiting professor at UNLV many, many years ago. And we, I think, have both championed a number of those artists, Almond and Brian and Tim Bavington, and a number of faces from that really interesting time with Dave Hickey at the helm there. You can't miss his essay in the catalog, not just as a sales pitch, but he speaks really beautifully about contemporary art in a very unacademic, fun, approachable way, calling things thingy things and things with space around them. And he really brings to life and supports and encourages the love and joy that art brings. He's also incredibly smart. He graduated with a BA in Modern Thought and Literature from Stanford in 1985 and received his MA in Art History from Harvard in 1987. He's received numerous fellowships and grants, and he's a writer, a critic, a curator. He is currently the chair of the art department at Claremont University. He is a contributor to the LA Times. He's written books, essays, curated many exhibitions, and I have a couple titles here for you. Electric Mud, LA Now, Underground Pop. So you can see why I thought NOW-ISM would be a good fit for him. So with that introduction, I'm going to hand it over to you and let you start the conversation.
So I wanted to start, Sarah, with the three pieces in the show, just so people would have works to look at that we'd talk about, and then kind of go from there backwards and forwards. So could you say a little bit about the three pieces in the show, like where they came from, where you were at, what you were thinking of, how you knew when they were done, and such about those three guys?
Yeah, they're all from distinctly different times, although I still work in all these different ways. And I don't actually have images of all of them, but this one is Kiss. This is the one that's on the cover, and this is the most recent. It's from a show I did at Gallery Lalong February of this year. This painting, I mean, I'm going to tell you the stories behind them, but also I sort of prefer the viewer just to have their own experience, but music is really important to my studio practice. I can't really work in silence, and I was obsessed with Kanye's Yeezus album, so this is actually called Kiss Yeezus in parentheses. And I worked on it for over a year. Originally, this is huge, it's like almost 12 feet by 7 feet. Originally, it was a giant, sort of like what Rebecca was talking about with Brian's, with 5 together, but it was so big that I couldn't see it in my studio, so they ended up becoming 5 separate paintings. And then this one also, I couldn't resolve. You know, sometimes I can make a painting this size in a day, or it could take 2 years. But I'm just gonna show you a little bit of where this came from. Well, the title actually came from this work on site, which was Los Angeles Nomadic Division did a conceptual painting show, works on site in downtown LA, and this is in an old bank. And you can't see, but there's string, the same type of string that's in the painting, but it's floating in space before the recession of the window, and it's making X's. And Christopher Knight wrote a review on this show, and kind of went bonkers talking about how much he loved this piece, to the point was like, it was awesome, but a little embarrassing and a little like, I couldn't look my other peers in the eye after it. But he kept talking about the X's as kisses, which is funny because I never would talk about love or kisses, even though like I've been paired before with George Herms, who he's all about love, and most of my work is about love or relationships or emotions and working shit out. So I was like, I'm just gonna own it up and call this painting Kiss. But the X's originally, so this was here at CCAD with Michael's show, Wall. I did 2 shows with Michael that year. These X's, and then a couple other installations that have X's, to me were about X marks the spot or negating painting and having this both sides of like, here it is and then here it's not. And this is a huge painting that I had 9 days to make, but then it gets completely destroyed afterwards. This is the first X's. This was at Honor Fraser. Okay, so then the first work, and the only other one I have an image of in here was for my first New York show. I used to show with Sarah Meltzer Gallery, and it was this show, and the title of the show was called You Aurora Borealis Me. There's these old Nirvana bootleg tapes where Kurt Cobain says someone else should use the word Aurora Borealis, and I grew up in my teenage years listening to that and being like, I'm gonna use that word. So this show was a whole show about love, and this painting to the right is called Secret Magic Plan. It's on paper, so back then I was only doing works on paper. It's new that I've been able to like rationalize and successfully use canvas to the way I want to, but, and this is also an interesting shift in the work on paper because it starts, there's always systems in my work, but this is the first time the systems become visible. So the left side of this painting is a scarf a silk scarf that's been glued down and then painted over, and then the right side's been airbrush painted, mimicking it. And Secret Magic Plan was this personal thing I had with the person I was dating that was long distance, and it was this idea of like, when you're long distance, these weird things you do that keep you together psychically. And then in between those two, Ron got this music sheet, which is another body that I do, and I actually don't have a single one, but I have this really special book I've been working on. So these are music sheets, and this one you can't even see the notations, but this book has about 25, and I've been working on this since 2008. And it was cool to see the piece last night at Pizzuti because I actually had cut a hole in the middle of it, which I had forgotten about, which is also there's a moment where there's holes in everything, and that was an early start to that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and it's feeling based when they're finished.
And the title of this one?
This music book?
Yeah.
I just call it music book, and there's like 25 plus paintings still happening in it.
Oh, but the one in the gallery is, I think it's called a
that
sphere,
one,
a sphere.
a spiral, a spirit, a sphere, or something. So that was from.
Actually, I have it in my notes.
Oh, well, it's actually
a
part
spirit,
of.
a spiral, a sphere.
Yeah, it's a line in a poem that I cannot remember. It's a really famous poet, but my friend Coulter Jacobson sent me this poem. We're always sending each other poems and writing poems for each other, and I had to do art positions in Miami, so I decided that because Miami is such a disgusting place, I would make a booth that is a poem. So every piece, so when you looked at the title sheet, you would read the full poem. So that was one line in the poem. Yeah.
And I'm interested in what you were talking about when you did the piece at the abandoned bank downtown.
Oh, yeah.
And then the review comes out, and there was almost like a too muchness to the review. Did it kind of embarrass you, or what was that dynamic?
I was thankful, although, like, quite honestly, a New Yorker texted me, "Are you having sex with him?" And I was like, "I'm pretty sure he's gay. I've never met him, but thanks a lot." So that's just like, fuck you, because that's how, even though we are friends, but so there's that side. But the other thing is, Christopher Knight slammed me when I first moved to LA, and I did 2008 California Biennial with Laurie Furstenberg at ACMA. He slammed me. He said, like, there's already been stockholder, what's the point? She uses wallpaper. I was like, no, that's fucking hand painted. That's not wallpaper. So it was a redemption. It felt like, thank you. Now you understand what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And actually, everything he said was so on point. He talked about cathedrals, and I had just come back from Italy where I was in the Duomo all the time. So
was it more you did the piece, you put it out in the world, someone wrote about it, and you actually liked that response, and then other people responded to the response, and that's where it got too muchness?
No,
Or-
it's just, you know, as an artist, you're like, you can't, I mean, all artists are egomaniacs, but you have to keep it in check. And I don't know, you want people to understand your work, but then also I love that Gustin stopped reading his reviews at a certain point. Like, that's huge inspiration, and you don't want to be affected by the outside. It's also very Mike Kelly, you know, he's classic, where they reviewed about the child molestation or whatever it was, and then he started making work about that. Like, that's always been inspirational. Yeah, but it was more like having Christopher Knight talk about the kisses and the X's. It was also just so obvious that I couldn't believe I hadn't owned up to it.
Oh, I see. So that was a part that
Yeah.
someone saw something in it
Yeah.
that made you see more in it.
Yeah.
Almost to the point of embarrassing you.
Well, no, it was more just embarrassing that, like, it was a huge group show and the review was mostly about my piece. I mean, it was amazing, and I'm very thankful. And also, especially with work that gets destroyed, it's so nice to have a great piece of writing that
Lives on.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I've gotten that where I'm mostly a critic, and when I write about something I really love, I'll just go over the top. I'm in love with this.
I love
and
that.
then other people will say like, "Oh, you screwing him?" And they say, and it's so much about reducing what's going on between me and the work to a personal relationship.
But
And
that's
to me-
their own shit, though.
Right, that's what I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and to me, that's that New Yorker basically saying,
Yeah.
"This doesn't count because it's,
Yeah.
you screwed the boss to get the job, or
Yeah.
or whatever."
The gay
And
boss.
Yeah, but it's totally
Yeah.
it's getting rid of what's there.
Yeah.
And another thing I want to get at there, kind of with the X's, which become kisses, and then also where you kind of have a spiral and a sphere, which are kind of like just descriptions of what's there geometrically or formally, and then you kind of slip in spirit.
Yeah.
And has that been kind of something you've been up to in everything, is kind of smuggling the S word and not spheres or spirals back into abstraction?
Yeah, I'm going to show these. This is the Masonic temple in Marfa that I also did with land earlier. And it's very much about that. So, I mean, it has a lot of different things. This was called Forget Me Not. It was a flower shop right before this, but also I had met Shamim 10 years prior, and she never put me in a biennial. And then finally she came to me and was like, "Remember that work from 10 years ago? This is the perfect place." So it was a nice circle completed. And also, the center of Masonic belief is the Supreme Being, but the Supreme Being can be anything. So I was trying to create a full installation in 2 weeks where painting is the Supreme Being. So the spirit, it's all there. And a lot, I appropriate or like include and react for and against the architecture and environment, but also I've lived in California more than half my life. So the spirit of California is always there.
Yeah, because when I entered the art world, you would never say spiritualism if you want to be taken seriously.
Yeah, it's partially why I think it's still true.
Yeah, you've come off as a...
Yeah, that's why. It's why you should do it.
Yeah, exactly. And also, and formalism was kind of the flip side of spiritual view. When I started out, it was if I called you a formalist, those times it would be an insult and basically saying your work is about nothing.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of... Actually, I think both of those things are kind of going away in your work, but there's kind of this two-step going on with the history of painting and the history of abstraction. And could you talk a little bit more about what painting means to you and why abstract painting is so important to you?
I have always just deeply believed in abstraction. I mean, this is a very silly story, but I remember I was always, really great at drawing, and I remember being next to my best friend in second grade, and I was drawing the still life perfectly, and she was making this fucking mess, and I started making fun of her, and her father was like, "She's an abstract artist." And I was like, "What is that?" And he was like, "That means it doesn't have to look like what's in front of you." And that, to be 8 or 9 or whatever. And I was like, "Oh, there's a term for that." And then there was like this giant big bowl of macaroni and cheese in front of me, and then everything sort of became abstract.
And you haven't changed.
Yeah, exactly. But it really is about freedom, because I mean, I'm getting better with words now, but for years I just didn't want to talk, and I want people to like give me the space to make my work. And you know, actually George Herms always talks about how artists you're kind of asked to be schizophrenic because you have to like do an inward spiral to get to your work and an outward spiral to get your work out to the world, and then you get caught in this in between. And you know, like abstraction was this great space where it gave you some slippery space, and it also helps. Like, I love Audre Lorde's essay, "Poetry is not a luxury," and poetry isn't a fucking luxury, and it's there to help get you to the next level and to create this freedom.
And did you find abstraction was like a larger, more open, more neutral, or less contested territory when you started out, or was it actually?
No, because I came up in SF, all the mission school people were around me and my friends, and I didn't want to be in that, even though like I showed them in my house and stuff and friends with them. But being an abstract painter, in SF, people would always say, "Oh, you're so LA," and now I'm in LA, and they're like, "Oh, you're so SF." So you know, but I don't want to be. I just want to be my own thing, so that's fine. But I've actually, I mean, this is kind of too heavy to get into, but there's a huge shift, obviously, that's been happening in abstraction, and it's super popular now. And there's abstraction happening in a huge wave where it's the aesthetic of abstraction and it's the design of abstraction, and that actually fucking really bothers me.
I call it lazy abstraction.
Yeah, it is lazy.
Yeah.
But whatever, it's the market too, so.
And it's, well, to me, it's not just abstraction. Like that Mike Kelly show that was just at MoCA was really powerful and really strong.
Amazing.
And what I loved about the work is to me, like Kelly in a nutshell would be, I'm going to develop a system to figure out what the world means. And then as he starts doing that, going through the work, that system falls apart and he's left with nothing, or meaninglessness, and the next work starts over again. And to me, there's this drive to build meaning and a failure built into everyone. And that tug of war was just heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
And then but I look at lots of people that like look at that kind of stylistically and do mics.
Yeah.
And there's you just walk through that show and it's like, oh, I know where he got his work. I know where he got this. And it's that kind of, so it's not just.
It's true, yeah, it's just devoid of soul.
Of that sort of thing, yeah. And were you always a painter? Was painting special or drawing was?
Well, I mean, I work on paper, and I always thought the works on paper were painting, not drawing. Now, I think maybe those are my drawings. I don't know. But I say I'm a painter just because I feel like painting needs that. But
because it's a little bit of in your face.
It's a little bit of fuck you.
Yeah. I gave a lecture in San Francisco years ago, and actually it was the San Francisco Art Institute, and it was about painting in LA. And 2 classes of 30 kids each, let me get 5 minutes into my lecture, and they all stood up and left because they hated painting. And I was like,
yeah.
It was like, great.
Well, if you can survive that school, I mean, that was
but that was like you weren't supposed to paint, and you weren't supposed to paint abstractly.
I didn't paint there. I went for new genres. I made really crazy, weird video art and did everything secretly in my bedroom and never took a painting class. And that's also why I think like I'm capable of painting now, Yeah, it was a hostile place.
How did you end up in Los Angeles?
For Lori's biennial. So I was doing a work on site at ACMA, and then because there was a moment where I was just making works on site in abandoned buildings, and she said, come down to LA, find an abandoned building, we'll do a big installation in the museum, one off-site. So I was like, okay, I have a terrible sense of direction. I didn't have a GPS. It was terrifying driving around, getting lost. And then I just got fed up, and I went out to see Andrea Zattel in the desert, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And then she just found me a place to live, and it happened. Like within a week, I was living there, and I didn't plan on that at all. Yeah.
So you went there for the art and
and I was over SF. I tried to move to New York a lot, but I just financially, I was not gonna get a job,
So LA was suitable for you because of like low rent, large spaces, and you get left alone?
Yeah, and I was still close. My primary gallery was an SF, still is Anthony Meyer. So, I was close enough to home that I had income, that I could do my thing. And I just love that LA, you can be reclusive or you can partake. And also in SF, as doesn't matter how big you are, people only come there for a certain reason. So in LA, you can get out, your work can get out a lot better. Although everything is changing so fast now and there's not cheap rent in the same way, and it's depressing. But it's also cool, it's great, there's a lot going on there.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious about painting and abstract painting giving you a particular kind of freedom or more area to do more space to do what you want to do. Is it different for you to do those kind of installations that are going to be there for a while and gone, or something on paper, or something on canvas? And what's the nature of those differences? Do you really?
Yeah.
Is it?
They're hugely different.
Yeah. Can you say?
Well, the works on site are psychotic, and so I don't plan anything. I'll just go to the space, sit there, I'll see it, and just attack. And that's how I paint too. But you have to travel, you go to a space, you've already done all the promotion, you could totally fail. Like the level of risk and failure is so high, but it's awesome because it pushes you to the next extreme. You figure out moves there that then you can bring back to the studio. And I was so against painting in objects for years because I didn't want to just like end up in a museum that felt like a cemetery. You know, it was like really important that the work have life. And the works on site keep it so there's like life just jumping out of it. And they're also very physical, so you can really feel the body and the viewer relates to them in their own body because they occupy all forms of space. The paintings are in between that, and the works on paper to me are very mental and meditative. They cripple my body. I'm making less and less of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the small works on paper are kind of
Are
terrible.
absolute torture?
Yeah.
Because you're packing so much into...
Yeah, like I've lost my arm a lot. It's like a classic painter's problem when you're in the same position. But that being said, like after, like I'm on a month of travel now, I'm sure the first thing I do when I go back is work on paper because it just grounds me back in the studio. So, I mean, to me, they're a lot more psychological.
The paper.
Yeah, and the other is much more bodily.
And painting is the pivot between the drawing and the installation?
Yeah, even though I think they're all painting, but the works on canvas. Yeah, because the canvas are body size. So once something, even the big works on paper, the big work on paper, like Secret Magic Plan, is very different than a Spirit, a Spiral, a Sphere. When it gets smaller and like it's about what's just in front of you, not what's all around you, then that's the shift.
If you had to write a job description for a contemporary artist, what would that be?
Well, good luck. But I loved what Rebecca, I skimmed both essays fast, and I should have read them fully, but she has a sentence, artists are like adventures. And basically, like, that says it, because it's an adventure. You have to risk everything. But in all seriousness, like, I really believe in crazy work ethic and being able to just abandon rejection and just zoning into yourself and not caring about the others, what people think.
So kind of a fearlessness.
Yeah.
With
determination and, throwing your hands up, because.
And did you have that figured out at a pretty young age, or did that? Sort of like the second grade when you knew you.
Yeah, and I dropped out of high school at 15, and before, like, the only other thing, I was always really good at school and stuff, but the only other thing I did with that passion was I was a crazy snowboarder as a kid, but then when I realized if I break my arm, I can't draw.
Oh, no kidding.
So then I was like, all right, I'm gonna stop snowboarding.
So art trumped snowboarding.
Yeah, it did.
Pretty early on.
Yeah.
And since then, any moments of like doubt, frustration, I'm going to go back to snowboarding, or I'm going to go to med school?
That'd be so funny.
You'll see in the
constant doubt, but never that I'm going to do. I have moments where I'm like, my really good curator friend just married a lawyer, and I'm like, shit, I should have done that. But not really, I don't really want to do that.
Depends what kind of lawyer. No.
There's not really a question.
No. So you're like terminal artist.
Yeah, terminal Yale. Yeah.
And so what's for you the absolute best thing about being an artist?
Having my freedom, making my own schedule, meeting all the other amazing artists and traveling, and I mean, it's a pretty great life.
And what bugs you the most about the way art and artists get treated both in the art world and in the world at large?
Well, at the world at large, I mean, Europe is really different. Here, no one knows what you do. Like, my parents don't fully understand what I do. I don't really care, but there's not much respect for being an artist here. In the art world, you know, probably my biggest issues are with the market and auctions and dealers that treat their artists bad and artists that don't know how to ask to be treated or insist that they be treated correctly. Like, there's just not blueprints for how to do it. And it is really still the Wild West, and it's not regulated. And I mean, there's a beauty to that, because a lot of crazy shit can happen. But
there's a downside too.
Yeah. So it's just really important to work with good people. And that's actually, like, not to, you know,
Denigrate your dealers here?
well, no, not to like kiss ass to Columbus, but I feel like something that I've experienced here that's very different is the collectors and the curators. The people that are into art here are actually really into art. It's not, you know, they're not doing it to impress their movie star friend or whatever. It's a whole different thing, which is really refreshing to see.
No, and I think those things go on in different places, and there's some of each. You can always find, you know, the people who are passionate about stuff, and there's the people that want to buy it and then flip it 6 months from now. Or buy it because so-and-so.
So don't even understand what that means if you do that to somebody.
Yeah. No, that kind of intimate, personal connection, I think, has not disappeared, but
It's harder to find.
It's on the endangered species
it
list,
is.
where, you know, the collectors would get to know you and care about you. And now it's
or even
it's a
dealers that you join and they tell you they're going to still be around in 5 years, and they are. Like, you know, it's kind of crazy.
It's different,
Yeah.
Who are some of the artists that most inspired you or moved you or bothered you over the years?
Well, Tuttle was really huge, and he helped get me my first show, so that was great. And I love the spirit in his work. I fanned out on Ann Hamilton last night. For
good reason?
Yeah, for good reason. But there was a moment, actually, I went to, I did this weird bit, but there was a moment when I left the San Francisco Art Institute. It was like, I can't deal with this. I can't deal with the .com. I don't have enough money. I went back to my hometown, and I was maybe just gonna like stay there and like marry a local guy or something. It was like a really bad moment, and this New Yorker pulled me aside, and she's like, "You're going back to California. You're not staying here." And then one of the first like art books, I bought a feminist art book, and I bought this catalog from one of Anne's shows with the peacocks, and that was huge to see, because also it was installation. You know, it's the same time as Stockholder. Stephen Perino is rad, and I got to see the Kunsthal St. Gallen has most of his works, the largest collection, and I got to see them in person. And it was like, I saw them way after the canvases I was making that are deconstructed, but that was really great. Amy Silman's like a great spirit guide and friend, and it's a lot of, oh, and also like Rachel Harrison's fucking amazing. I really love Isa Genskin, and I always have, but then when I just saw that show, I was like, where's the Rachel Harrison show? Because that's just amazing work.
A lot of times in American culture, knowledge is valued more than pleasure. And I think that in the trickle down in the art world for that is like, you want to look serious and important, and pleasure is too much about fun, and we'll let that go. And then a lot of times I think it gets a boy and girl division too, where the guys are going to do mind and the girls can do body, and the mind is more important than the body. What's your relationship to the relationship between knowledge and pleasure, and how does that play out in this stuff? And does that have anything to do with being a woman?
Well, I've always favored poetry over theory, and I really believe in suspending my mind when I'm making the work, and I don't actually Like I don't plan, and if I know what I'm doing, I don't want to do it. I don't think there's a point in knowing what you're doing, because then it's like it's already been done. So the work is about discovery. I read Jack Spicer's Vancouver lectures at a pivotal time, and he talks about how, and it's the same as like the Shakers, how they would receive messages from people in the sky to make their beautiful drawings. Spicer was talking about having Martians rearrange the furniture in your brain, and that he didn't write his poems, they wrote his poems. And I feel like that's totally true. And then I start to like think about the work and understand the work after it's finished. But you know, it annoys me. Like I did all the reading you're supposed to do, and I understand it, but I don't see the point. And I feel like it is a lot of the times it's just people talking a bunch of bullshit because they feel like they have to. And then the woman
thing.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just gonna keep switching. The woman thing. I mean, well, this is a good woman thing. So this is the Masonic Lodge. To the left, you can see that's the Mason's sign, and it's like a compass and some two tools. But when you take the negative, it's the supravaginal. So I wanted to enter the fraternity through the vagina. And then that piece in the back, that canvas, I made in one day, and it was a self-portrait. I had hair like, it was so long, it was disgusting. I felt like there was an animal crawling on me all the time. So before I cut off all my hair.
I'm working on that.
Yeah, you'll get there. So this was sort of like a memory before I cut off all the hair. But yeah, I mean, you can't be a woman in the art world and not be constantly aware of the fact that you're a woman. But you can't be a woman in the world and not be constantly, So it's there, and I'm pretty ferocious about like I called the Lalong show Burning Bush, which to me was really funny.
being a poet.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway.
And so was feminism in particular inspiring or moving to you, or is background data?
Yeah. I mean, the best class I've ever taken in my life was with Trinity Minha, and it was at Berkeley, and it was a feminist theory class. But like Eleanor Anton and like a lot of 60s women and Matta Clark, I saw like at 14, 15 or Valley Export, and I was like, oh yeah, like here we go. But now it's not the 60s. And
But what you would prefer to like keep the spirit of that work alive rather than keep the appearance of that work?
Yeah, I mean, there's no point in doing that work.
Rehashing it, yeah.
Yeah.
People do.
I know, people do it all the time. But that's like, I feel like we're, especially maybe because of Cal Arts, but LA, it's like, you just learned about the 70s, really? It's like, again? It's so boring.
Yeah.
But.
That's bad teaching.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
This is a little guy. I think it's called Ojai mating ritual, and it's all these little weird bugs and stuff mating in Ojai, and there's safety pins. So there's a lot of weird materials that go into the work. It's a tiny canvas. Oh, this is really funny. Those are my jars of pee dyed. So this was this was an installation I did in London, and it was 9,000 square feet, a parking structure. You started on the roof, this is called the beginning, and then you walked down, and then you saw that. And then next to it, this one was called Modern, which was a portrait of my friend's Hecuba's band called Modern. And there was 6 other pieces like this, but this was brutal, like crawling around on my hands and knees in a filthy parking lot for 2 weeks. And they didn't have a bathroom. It was all dudes except for me. And I'm vegetarian, and and it's in the ghetto, and they're like, you can walk 3 blocks to the McDonald's. And I was like, oh
you
yeah?
get fries.
You can shake my piss for 2 months. So, yeah.
Seems fair.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, let's see which other ones haven't we seen. But then the biggest irony is then they installed this amazing restaurant with like gourmet porta pots right after I was done. This is called Ray-Bans with Split. This was in Zurich. This is like 2008 or something. So all the ones on the back are works on paper, and there was a wall here, and I had them take down the wall, and then I wanted to make a work on site that acted as a wall. And I still wasn't letting in like blobby, painterly stuff. It was still really embarrassing to me. So this side was all blobby, painterly stuff. And then this side was all things from Zurich. So like the hexagons were the roof tiles. The blue and the white is how they mark the streets in Zurich and Lucerne. The scarf I found on the ground. And then they sell these like crazy spray painted eggs that people eat, that was another thing. I was like, oh God, a woman who makes egg art, like how to do that.
But Easter egg.
It's year-round eggs. And then somebody gave me roses right before, so yeah. And this one actually, this was called Triangle for RJM. This is on paper, but Rebecca Morse is a really good friend. And before I moved to LA, we had like 4 or 5 people come into studio visits and say like, you have to meet Rebecca, you have to meet Sarah. So we finally met, actually the first show I did in LA, Nancy Meyer from LACMA, but on her own curated a show at FOCA. And it was me and Rebecca, one painting each that we had held on to from the year of 2005. And it was crazy to see them together. So that was for her because she's Blinky owns the Triangle, and then she does too. She's very Triangle. And then this one, that show was called Double Future, and this was called something with that in it. And the browns are all sands collected from different California beaches. So that's another level of like, the site keeps entering the work physically or psychically. Yeah.
What's your kind of ideal version of a viewer? What do you want from your viewers? What do you need from your viewers? What do you expect?
I don't expect much, honestly, but I don't. But I hope that they're patient. Like I hope that they're like emotionally open and psychically open, and they aren't afraid. But like that's a high order. Yeah, and that they take time. Like it is. I've started actually. This show didn't, but most of my shows now have benches that I make in there.
Okay.
I really want people to be able
hang
to
out.
sit and think, and feel it. Yeah.
I have one more question. What do you know now that you wished you knew 10 years ago?
It probably, someone once told me if you get 1 out of 20 things, you're doing great about 10 years ago, and I was like, okay, I'll think about that. But I think I used to take, like I've done so many giant studio visits that totally bombed or like didn't turn out. And I think back then that was really hard for me, and now I'm just like,
whatever.
It doesn't matter. Like you're doing your thing, everything's happening, just to like chill or something. Yeah.
Would you be willing to take questions from the audience?
If anybody has any questions, or Rebecca.
There's people here.
I know it's done based on a feeling. Like I know when a painting's gonna start, and I know if I don't get it in that moment, that's it, and I missed it. And it's the same with the finishing. But then I always like, it doesn't happen that much, but I always feel like I have to go home and then see it with fresh eyes to know that it's like, I'll know it's finished, but then it confirms it the next day. And then getting to see it again, like seeing Kiss up there in that great space, that was just so satisfying because I've never seen it with that much space. And actually, it looked great in Lelong, but it only had like a foot maybe to the ceiling, so this was really great.
And the other one you said, the one from 2008, you hadn't remembered there was a hole in the middle of it?
Yeah, because I kept one, but you know what? I kept one from that same body that was cut, and I didn't think I cut the music sheets. So that was funny. Just
So it was
to
a
see.
surprise.
Yeah, but I make so much work. Like these are 30 images, but I make 30 to 70 things a year. So it's like it's a friend that you know really well, but you forget the nuances until you see them.
So was that what this was like, coming back here and seeing these old long lost friends?
Yeah.
Has it ever been like ew, I would like to take that one back.
No.
Yeah.
No. I don't let things out unless I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a question back there.
The case that it'll influence you before you work, or is it just kind of happen as you go?
No, that's always been the case. So before I really got into making objects, I only made works on site in abandoned buildings. It was because I was broke and I didn't want to have a job or pay for a studio, so I would just do reckless things to have a space. But in those, a lot of them were like weird squats, and they were just so embedded with funkiness that you couldn't not deal with it. And then likewise, even with a gallery show, if it has a work on site, that's in it. But also with hanging, I don't let the galleries hang my work, which is a thing, a balance, a delicate balance. But to me, hanging in the space and making sure the painting's in the right space is super important. Work-wise, I mean, I feel great. I always really believe in what I'm doing, but there's something about, like, I was firmly against making paintings that could be in a living room next to a couch. So, and now I feel like I'm completely confronting the canvas in a way that it's not a passive thing. So that feels really good to be able to feel like I'm dealing with canvas and dealing with painting. But I guess, I don't know, I feel maybe more balanced now. But. Yeah, the works on site? Yes. Yeah, I mean, in the beginning I did everything, but now I don't. Now I'll just, usually I'm not there when the show closes, so I'll just say these are the pieces I want to keep. I mean, sometimes they don't send them back, even though they say they will, but I know going into it that it's all going to get destroyed. But it's fine, you know, it's part of it. Like, I don't actually feel a sadness at all about it. And I also know that they're going to exist in image, so I make sure it's documented well.
Like the pea jars.
It was like, you can keep the pea jars, but you have to shake them every day. Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, Michael's bringing amazing people through. So to have, I mean, and there's tons of other places. Like, I'm totally impressed with the amount of great art in Columbus, but right down the hall, there's so many great artists coming through. And really, like, that's who you learn the most from, even if it's not meeting the artist personally, but from their work. Yeah.
So you don't think it's an either-or thing? You dive into the traditional design stuff?
Well, I mean, do you want a job? You know, like, that's, I went to the San Francisco Art Institute because I did like portfolio day. I was like, I'm going to Cooper Union, and then I got pissed because they asked you to design a sign for a National Historic Site, and I was like, this is stupid, I'm not going there. But I remembered that the San Francisco Art Institute said, if you want a job, don't come here. And I was like, right, okay.
Yes. I can do that.
Yeah. So, but yeah, there's a lot of great resources here. Yeah, it's really different. Actually, one of the questions we had talked about but didn't is if you had anything to do over. Maybe you did ask me that.
Oh.
I don't know, which I wouldn't do anything over, but I do think that if I had left San Francisco earlier and successfully moved to New York, my career would be different than it is today, and I don't know that that would have been a good thing or a bad thing, but being in California, people are a lot slower to come to your work, like, than peers in New York who have shown just as much or been working just as long. So New York creates this level of exposure that is more serious than California, but California is so alive right now. I think, like, I mean, most people I know are leaving New York for LA, and I mean, that has its greatness and problems. And San Francisco is a bubble. I mean, it's great because I work with Tony Meyer and he's amazing, he's international, but that's a rarity there. And I was really lucky to start working with him when I was 25, so that's awesome. But other than that, SF is you're just crippled by social practice or SF mission school, which is just like, there's not much room to do what I do there. LA has room for everything. But I've done 3 shows in New York, and it's... Yeah, Sarah was a great supporter early on. But still, if I lived in New York and had done 3 shows, I would have, been in New York Museum shows by now. But that's classic. Like, you look at Jay DeFeo or Joan Brown, like it is what it is, I guess. But I think it's changing.
You'll do it when you're still alive.
Yeah, I better. I hope.
So do you think it's more a matter of what like suits one personally?
Well, it's like, what do you care about? And it's also, where do you come from? If you have a trust fund, sure, you can go to New York. I don't, and I want to be happy, and nature's important to me. And I grew up on a dirt road, so I have got to have a backyard and a front yard and trees, and I can do that in LA.
That's tough in Manhattan.
Yeah.
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 But you think LA is more of a slow brew and New York is more of a pressure cooker?
Well, I don't know, because I didn't brew in LA. And because I didn't go to grad school in LA, I have been an outsider.
Yeah.
And it's just
I
now.
think
it's huge.
That's a big deal, yeah.
It's huge, and people are they're jerks about it. And
it's cliquey.
It's so cliquey,
yeah.
and the teachers pass to their students, and it's great because
Bad teachers.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say Andrea's great, and I don't think she was a bad teacher, but she wasn't my teacher. But I met her at Skowhegan, so she's helped me, and she's there. And George Herms I met at Skowhegan, and he's helped me. But I don't have like the teacher lineage, and also I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
So it's funny because I feel like in LA it's cool to
is
teach,
a lineage, yeah.
and like I'm not. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, different can of worms.
It isn't.
Yeah.
Deal with those 2 worlds successfully.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's taken a long time. I'm like the best I've ever been at it now, but I'm not amazing at it. Like, I didn't actually go to the after party because I needed solo time, but I should have. But thank you for having that. I did. We couldn't find parking, but but it's hard, it's a real balance, and especially with travel, like, and I'm like vegan, it's a pain in the ass. You have to like figure out how to balance everything. But really working with good galleries, having amazing directors that come out here and do a lot of the work, and having people that you trust representing you is huge. And that's not easy to find either, but yeah, just having integrity, I think, is probably the most important.
What would you call lazy abstraction?
Oh, okay.
Abstraction.
I'm not going to name people because I don't want that on the internet, but
After party.
Yeah. Well, I really think there's something happening right now where, actually, I see it in grad schools all the time when I go to do studio visits, where, there's some people who love my work and are making work like mine, and they're sincere, but a lot of times I'm like, oh, you think it's that easy? Like, actually, everything has intention in my work, and you can't just take the general style and do it really fast, and that's it. But then there's this other thing happening where a lot of painters, and a lot of people that used to always paint representationally, who are painting abstractly now, I think a lot of people sort of got market savvy that abstraction was selling a lot, and it's like they looked at it as a design problem, but you can feel it. It's like, does it have depth or not? And also, like, there is a cocaine chic lack of depth in the art market. There's a whole zone of that, so like that work can go there and get flipped, and then the careers end. Or you could like be real and make great abstract painting.
And to me, I want to add just a little bit to that. It's like, I look at lots of art, and like sometimes I'll go into a gallery and give it some time, give it some time, give it some time, and after a while I think like, you want me to be excited about this? And to me, there's just not enough there. And then I start thinking like, you were really excited to go to the studio and make this. And if I don't get any kind of generosity coming out of the work, I'll go look at something else. And part of it is so much work is made for that, just like the flip through is like, oh cool, and you're on. But if you hang it up across the dining room table, and it has to hold up on the wall for a week, a lot of stuff just doesn't. And there's just something that kind of intrigues me, fascinates me, bugs me, keeps me seeing more. One of my favorite things to do is after I go away for a week or two and come back home and see the art hanging in my house, and what I notice is like, wow, that's not how I remembered it. And that's the part I'm into. I don't have art around me to be familiar and make a safe, cozy place where everything is the same. I have art around me to make me see things differently. And it's just that's what I like. I don't expect everyone in the world to like that, but I am bored by people who aren't like that. So.
Are we done?
Rebecca? Yeah?
Yeah, thank you.
It was fantastic. I really enjoyed that.